Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue learn Python. Today we're going to get your hands dirty and dive into some actual coding. But before you can start coding in Python, you need to have a coding environment set up. There are several options here. There's this online coding environment. As long as you have an internet connection or you have a web browser, you should be able to use this coding environment out of the box. Let's click into it together. On this web page, you can see a lot of programming language. Here we select Python. Once it's open, you can see my Python version is 3.8.2. So your version may not necessarily be exactly the same, but as long as it starts with Python 3, it should be good enough. Let's drag it to make the black window a bit bigger. So this black window is what we call shell. This is interactive coding window, which means you can type something like 1 plus 2, press enter. Immediately, it's going to show you the result is 3. Or you can try print, hello, welcome. It's going to print the result immediately on the window. So this is what I mean by interactive. For this tutorial, I'm going to stay with this coding environment. But you should also know there's other coding environments you can use. For example, you can download Python from the official Python website. Let's click into it. You can see the latest version is 3.8.5. You can download it. Depending on your operating system, you can download it for Windows, for Linux, for Mac. As we mentioned last time, Python is cross-platform. Okay. There's other options as well. For example, there's Canopy, there's Anaconda. So these are packaged Python, which means it includes not only the Python installation, but also a lot of packages, frameworks, third-party libraries, which can empower you to do more things. But for the sake of this tutorial, to introduce Python, this online coding environment is good enough for us. So today we're going to talk about data types of Python. There's several different data types in Python. For example, numbers. Numbers are basically integers, floating numbers, or decimals. It could be real number, it could be complex number. So these are the numbers. Strings basically is a text. Boolean is either true or false. List, tuple, dictionary, set are all basically collections of items. I'm going to dive into each data type in details so you know exactly when to use which data type. Numbers. Let's look at the first data type, integer, which is int in Python. Integer is nothing but whole number. It could be positive, like 1, 2, 3. It could be negative, like -3, -5. It could be 0 as well. So these are the integers. On the other hand, these are not integers because they have decimal points. They are floating numbers. Okay. Now let's think about it. What about 0.0? Is it an integer or it's not an integer? We can find it out. Let's go to our online coding environment. In Python, there's a function called isInstance. You can use this function to check if an object is of certain data type. For example, 1, 2, 3, int. It returns you true, which means 1, 2, 3 is of the integer type. Let's try another one. 1.23. It returns you false, means 1.23 is not integer. Okay. With this function, we can figure out 0.0. Let's try 0 first. It is an integer. How about 0.0? It returns you false. It's not an integer. So now you know in Python there's a difference between 0 and 0.0. We look at integer. Now let's look at another number type, float. Float basically is real number with decimal points, 1.2, 2.3, 3.4, -5.0, 0.0, of course. So now let's use what we just learned, the isInstance, to test float. We know 0.0 is not integer, but if we check it with float, it returns you true. So 0.0 is a float. Let's try another float. Let's try minus 10.5. It's also a float. So now we have learned both integer and float. Can we switch between these two types? Of course. We can convert an integer to a float. We can also convert a float to an integer. We can convert values between these two data types. Let's see how we can do it. We have an integer, 3. We want to convert it into float number. We just need to type float, open, close, put 3 in between. 3.0. This is how you convert an integer 3 to a float number 3.0. How about the other way? How we can convert a float into an integer? Let's see, we have float 5.0. If we want to convert it to an integer, we just need to do int 5.0. There you go. You get number 5. So this is integer. Now we have question. How we can handle the decimal points in float? For example, if we have a float 5.1, what happens when we convert it into integer? We can test it out. Int 5.1, it returns you 5. Okay, so it removes the 0.1. What happens if it's 5.9? Still 5. So basically, when you're converting a float into an integer, what Python does is it truncates the decimal part of this number, just keeps the integer part. It works this way for both positive and negative numbers. Let's see, when we convert minus 5.9 into an integer, it just returns you an integer part, which is the minus 5. So this is how you convert between float and integer. So now we learned the numbers. What can we do with numbers? We can do the basic mathematical operations between these numbers and a lot of math functions. Let me show you how we can do it. For example, we can do 3 plus 2 equals 5. We can do 3 times 2. We can do 3 minus 2. 3 divided by 2. So all these mathematics operations. And we can do star 2. What does this do? Basically, it's 3 to the power of 2. 3 to the power of 3. 3 to the power of 4. We can also take absolute numbers. For example, ABS minus 3. It's going to return you the absolute value of 3 minus 3, which is 3. We can do roundings. Round 3.4. It's going to show you 3. But if you round 3.5, it's going to show you 4. So basically, you can do rounding. Notice the difference between rounding and int. If you do an int 3.5, it's just going to keep the integer part. So it returns you 3. We can also do 5 mod 3. 2. Basically, it's going to give you the remainder of 5 divided by 3. So if you do 3 mod 3, it's going to give you 0 because 3 divided by 3, the remainder is 0. So this is some basic math operations. And also, you can do max and min. For example, I have max 5, 6, it's going to give you 6. Basically, max gives you the bigger number of these two. You can do min. You guessed it, it gives you the smaller number of these two. So this max and min. So next, we're going to take a look at something called complex numbers. So this is something I'm just going to mention it, but we don't really use it a lot in our real-life programming. At least I don't use it a lot. For example, you can do 1 plus 1g. So this is a complex number. In Python, we have a function called type, which can show the type of a data. For example, if I do type 2, you can see it returns me class int, means 2 is an integer. If I do type 3.4, it's going to return me class float, means 3.4 is a floating number. Now if I do type 1 plus 1j, this is going to show me complex, means this is a complex number. Okay. That's all about numbers we want to learn today. So today, let's do a practice. So let's say we have a circle. We want to know what is the area of the circle and what is the circumference for this circle, right? The circle radius is 5, and we use 3.14 as the pi value, okay? So now let's calculate the area of the circle, okay? The area of the circle is defined by pi times r squared, okay? So the pi is 3.14 times r squared. We know r is 5 and the square is to the power of 2. So this is the area of this circle. That's all for this class. Hope it's useful. Please subscribe and leave me a comment if you have any questions. I will answer it as soon as possible. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.